episode 91 of Grace and Steel. I'm Kevin Steele.
And I'm Kevin Michael Grace.
This show, we were going to tell you that it's time to go ahead, eat the rich, because, well, they're bad people, and what's more, getting worse. But we're not going to do that. Instead, we're going to tone it down and suggest that the President of the United States, if he is so inclined to, go on, bust the trusts. That's fine with us. What with the attacks on free speech by big business, with the imposition of a globalist monoculture by ever-emerging corporate monsters, with the stifling of creative competition by monopolies and duopolies, people are saying that the big corporations have far too much power, and that they're using it to make the world a better place only for themselves, and screw everybody else. So it's time, some say, to take that power away. Of course, there have been calls to do this before. Kevin, rich people have always been envied, disliked, even hated. It doesn't seem to have affected them much. What's changed?
Well, that hatred, envy, dislike came largely from the left. And I think what's changed now is coming increasingly from the right.
Oh, which right? We talking dissident right?
Oh, is there a name for this group besides alt-right? But I think our listeners know who we're talking about. Okay. I just say that the new right, as it was called, that was associated with William Buckley's National Review, with Russell Kirk's The Conservative Mind, although that book doesn't have very much about economics in it. But the movement, which became essentially what was called the conservative movement, it was anti-communist, and it was pro-capitalist. And after this movement called Fusionism of Frank Meyer, which essentially incorporated libertarianism or libertarianism light into conservatism, we had this situation where rich people were kind of worshipped. Mm-hmm. And that the free market replaced the church as, the place where we worshipped. And
okay. I was going to ask you whether it was patriotic and nationalist as well, and you're saying it was anti-Christian, or it replaced the church by default?
Well, it replaced the church because this is personal, isn't it? God is a personal thing. That's the way we're supposed to think of it. Supposed to think of God now, because it's our personal religious beliefs are no one else's business.
All right.
And so, this vacuum in belief, as I say, we've been worshiping the free market, as it's called, free enterprise, the rich people. I mean, you've seen this especially since the 1980s. CNN started, running these profiles of rich people, and we were supposed to gawk at them. There was that Robin Leach's show, Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous.
Oh, well, there's always been sort of a fascination, at least, going back to the Citizen Kane days, and the...
Citizen Kane wasn't exactly a hero in that movie, was he?
No, but a fascination with the lifestyle, I guess. I don't know whether it was he hated,
No, but I mean, if you remember Citizen Kane, there's a great deal of attention paid to his pointless and depressing mania for collection. Which is, I'm a rich person and I can buy all of these thousands of valuable things, and eventually they just get cataloged and shoved in a basement, never to be seen again.
Okay, but that wasn't a movie of the left, really, was it?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't a particularly a movie of the left. But I mean, one of the questions that the movie raises is, how much money does any man need? Mm-hmm. And does money make you happy?
Yeah, I suppose. And that was following the zeitgeist of the day, which was after the Great Depression, and the Great Depression brought us all kinds of socialism as well, including, Steinbeckian Grapes of Wrath type stuff. The Art of the Era brought us, a lot of intellectuals
there's
joining.
A difference then because of this idea that rich people make you poor. Well, I don't know whether that was exactly the case now. I think that it is the case that rich people are making us poor. You remember what Trump said of Hillary Clinton last year. She gets rich making you poor. which I thought was a brilliant line. But the conservative movement argued that rich people were per se a good thing.
The job creators, I think.
Oh, yes, they were the job creators, and they also, looked after culture, and they were also, since they didn't have to, worry about making the next mortgage payment or the next rent payment, they had all this time for their brains to come up with wondrous ideas to improve our lives.
Okay. That's largely been transferred to Silicon Valley now. But I suppose the fact that they've gone globalist, is that why the right doesn't like them anymore? The right has become nationalist or patriotic in the United States, and now they're resented because these people, are seen to be able to go anywhere in their super yachts and control governments with their Facebook pages and things like this. Why the resentment?
Here's the peg, as they call it in the news business for this show. It's a tweet by Ann Coulter from August 30th. And it's in reaction to the reports that the Trump administration, having failed to end Obamacare, was now going to move on to tax cuts. And Coulter tweeted, "Bush cut taxes. Did it create millions of jobs? Nope. The rich pocketed their tax cut and sent jobs abroad, hired guest workers, F them." Now, Ann Coulter, very influential woman. She's been very influential in the Trump campaign with her book, Adios America. Now, Ann Coulter was pretty much a straightforward conservative years ago. As we understand conservatives, she was one of the inventors of the line that liberals are the real racists. The Democrats are the real racists.
She got us going on that.
Well, I don't know whether she was the one who started it, but that it was the Republicans who were voting for the Civil Rights Acts of the 1960s, and it was the Democrats who were voting against.
Right, yeah, and Lincoln was a Republican.
Yeah, Lincoln was a Republican, yes.
That stuff started in the late 1990s. I remember reading the stuff in National Review. They were doing that all the time.
But what we have seen on the right is a growing realization that the GDP is a useless measure of prosperity.
Yeah. Well, we've much discussed here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, you see, the GDP rises. The GDP's not rising enough. And there's talk about it going up to 4% under Trump. Now, what does that even mean? What does the GDP even mean? Let's not get into that. But the question is, no one talks about per capita GDP for the reason that, it just seems like the rich are getting richer and the middle class is getting poorer.
Yeah, well, isn't that the essence of Coulter's tweet? What's in it for us?
What's in it for us? Yes, I mean, yeah. Pat Buchanan led the way on this. Pat Buchanan, going back to the 1990s, a series of books and columns, explained that today's rich are not like the rich of the past.
Yeah.
With regard, particularly with Americans, when the chairman of General Motors said, the business of America is business, and he said what's good for General Motors is good for America, there were certain assumptions there. And the primary assumption was reciprocity. That America is
floats
good.
All boats thing.
Yes, America is good to General Motors because General Motors is good to America. As Buchanan explained, modern rich people, modern businessmen, and the higher they get, the more they feel this way, have no loyalty to anyone. They used to say to their shareholders, they don't have any loyalty to their shareholders. Basically, they have a loyalty to, the board of directors?
Right. Well, they seem to have recently developed an antipathy towards hate. That it's almost as if they sensed that here was an opening for us to be liked again, and they all dived in, after Charlottesville, right?
Well, no, that this goes back some decades as well. That I've expressed this with means of talking about Warren Buffett and Warren Buffett's father. Warren Buffett's father was a Republican congressman, and he was what they used to call a rock-ribbed Republican. That is to say, he was laissez-faire. That FDR, with his New Deal, this was un-American. This was perhaps treasonous. It was socialist, maybe even communist. That the old right had this view that, we have this system where, people work hard, they educate themselves, they can move up the ladder, and the government is getting in the way. Now, Warren Buffett, who, despite being one of the richest men in the world, he's this folksy fellow who sits on the porch and drinks Coke out of a glass bottle, and he's just like you and me, except that he manages to be one of the most powerful men in America and gets these sweetheart deals
and from the bank is on the moon,
from the Bank of America and other companies, and it's a Keystone Pipeline. Yeah, we got to stop the Keystone Pipeline. The fact that the oil now moves on trains owned by Warren Buffett, no, that has nothing to do with stopping the Keystone Pipeline.
To get the advantage, yes. Okay. We understand why, guys like that are, I guess, would be hated by the right.
No, but you see, you have to understand the deal that's been made. In the past, the rich were the enemy of government, particularly what you'd call activist government.
Mm-hmm.
What the rich figured out was, if they support government campaigns, in favor of immigration and diversity and multiculturalism and homosexuality and on down the list, then in return, the government tells them, let's say competition bureaus, antitrust bureaus, various government agencies looking into restraint of trade and fraud, they would be looking at you, but they're not going to be looking at you now. You can do whatever you want so long as you continue to support us. And you have this situation where, starting with Obama, compared to George Bush, there was no investigation and prosecution of financial fraud to speak of. It just
that was
stopped.
Change. That was real change you could count on.
Yeah, it just stopped. And one of the reasons for that is, this didn't start with Obama, obviously, but the regulatory agencies hire the regulators. I mean, the good ones, the smart ones, they get paid a lot of money to move on the side of the foxes. Previously they were protecting the chickens, and now they're on the side of the foxes.
Okay. Well, we've seen some talk, I guess, from both sides, actually. I went looking into this whole idea of the trust busting idea. They were talking about that prior to the election. Maybe Trump could do that. Now all kinds of people are talking about it. The left and the right, the anti-monopoly movement seems to be growing from, well, I guess the intellectual left anyway. It's not necessarily a Main Street kind of idea, but I'm seeing articles about it. There was one in Mashable on September 2nd. The anti-monopoly ideas Google tried to suppress are growing influential. Things like that. Here, there was that Washington Post thing. Well, actually, there was the Washington Post one that appeared on, what day was that? That was that Zephyr Teachout. August 30th. Google is coming after critics in academia and journalism. It's time to stop them. And in that article, there was a link to another article that went back to April 20th. Want to rescue rural America? Bust monopolies. This is coming from the Washington Mockingbird, right? This is not the people who support Trump. Yet they're telling him, well, go ahead and bust the monopolies. That needs to happen. So, like I said, I seem to see the idea busting trusts getting some support.
Yeah, but it's like so many of us have become like lab rats now.
Mm-hmm.
That Amazon, say. That I'll just say, I've had a lot of experience with Amazon, and I quite like Amazon, the customer experience, that is. Particularly right. Amazon Co. UK, their customer service is outstanding,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've gotten used to dealing with Amazon. Now, I'm forced to remind myself that I used to there was nothing that I loved more in life than going to record stores, bookstores, DVD, Blu-ray stores, and just, looking at what they had. What was new, what was in the shelves, right? And that delicious feeling of, saying to yourself, okay, I'm going to get this, and taking it up to the counter, and then taking it home and opening it up, and there it is. Instead of, waiting for it to arrive whenever it arrives. But I'd noticed that this journalist in Washington, Kelly Torrance, who I must confess, we both used to work with her. Mm-hmm. And I used to be engaged to her. But she seemed to be quite put out by this suggestion that Trump was going to go after Amazon.
Okay, well, I know she was a libertarian or a socially liberal, fiscally conservative person.
Yeah.
So, well, did it have anything to do with that?
Well, no,
Why was she upset?
No, she was upset. They talk about this a lot on NPC, I want my cheap DVDs. I want my cheap books. And I've got Amazon Prime, so I get them in a day, right? How dare you go after Amazon? Have you ever read any of these stories about what it's like to work for Amazon?
But aren't they all being replaced by robots?
Well, yeah, I guess the idea is that they're going to be replaced by robots, but have you read any of these stories about what it's like to work for Amazon?
A long time ago I did. I remember reading about these gigantic warehouses.
Yeah.
Traveling along sort of conveyors and things like this.
It's pretty grim.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty grim,
Right.
And, but we're not supposed to, this idea that, it's private, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
right.
What business is that of ours? Now, it's interesting that if you look at the history of the progressive movement was to a large extent the idea that, no, we can't have children working.
Mm-hmm.
We can't have children,
right.
but, we can't have people working for 16 hours a day and, grossly unsafe conditions. That the Industrial Revolution had led to a situation where workers were largely slaves. And this idea that, if it's private companies doing that, why would we care?
Yeah, well, of course it's not that simple. I think, was it you that pointed out the other day there was that statistic out that Google pays how much for lobbying? They're the third largest...
the third largest lobbyist in the United States, and I'm just...
What business is of ours? Well, what business of theirs is government, That's the question, right?
Well, no, I mean, it just seems to me that what they're trying to achieve is that they can get away with whatever they want.
Mm-hmm. Of course, that's the purpose of lobbying, yeah.
Google is essentially an advertising company.
Mm.
And they have a monopoly in a certain kind of advertising. I mean, what else does Google do? Well, it owns YouTube, which is essentially an advertising company as well.
Right? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Now, who runs YouTube? You know about this woman, right?
Yeah, her sister runs 23andMe, doesn't she?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Steve Saylor just did an article about the tale of two sisters. That's it. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's hilarious to me because, this genius, and she invented, what did she invent there? Like, what was her great insight? She rented a garage to the Google boys.
Founders, yeah.
To Google boys, in the same way that you have all of these billionaires whose stroke of genius was living in the same residence as Mark Zuckerberg at Harvard. Right.
Well, this is isn't that the essence of that Silicon Valley show? They're all living in that. It's not a pod. It's what does he call that place? Incubator. Yeah.
Incubator. Yeah, I like that phrase because we're going to reduce you to childhood. We're going to make you helpless infants.
No, it's ideas incubate there.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
In the freewheeling atmosphere of bachelors smoking up.
No, it's this woman who runs the CEO. Her name is, and the Polish people are going to get angry with me. Wojcicki. I screwed that up, obviously. But I'm looking at the Wikipedia entry. In addition to her U.S. citizenship, she is a Polish citizen as well.
Now, generally, we like Poles on this show.
Yeah, but you see, why would she want to be a Polish citizen?
Why? What, was she a Polish citizen originally? I'm sorry, I don't know her background.
Her grandfather was a People's Party and a Polish People's Party politician who was elected MP during the Polish legislative elected in 1947. Now, I suspect that one of the reasons why these people, Wilkinson Creep, he made a fuss a few years ago about how he's now a Canadian citizen, and, there was some sort of labyrinthine way in which he accomplished this. But you see, I'm not such a narrow person that I would only be a citizen of one country. I'm a citoyen du monde. I'm a citizen of the world. This is one of the things that Buchanan talked about.
Mm-hmm.
That this idea that, going back to, what's good for General Motors is good for America, General Motors was an American company. And it was working, obviously, for the benefit of its shareholders. It was working for the benefit of the American people. And, it was a pretty good deal there. It was a, pretty good deal because General Motors and the other big three car companies brought a lot of people into the middle class. That they became home.
What happened there? Right?
The thing that happened beginning in the 1970s, this idea that ordinary people have too much money. And we're going to have to do something about that because, you see, labor markets, national labor markets, that's not efficient enough. We have to aspire to a world labor market, which essentially means, as the left likes to say, the race to the bottom.
You said it before I did. I was actually going to dive in there with it. That was one of my lefty friends. That's his favorite phrase. He's been hammering that at me for 25 years.
Oh, you complain that you're only making $11 an hour. What about the workers in Burma who are earning 90 cents an hour? Well, first, I'm not living in Burma. Second, this is Canada, and it's not Burma. That we're going to compare the richest countries on Earth to the poorest countries on Earth. With the idea that the poorest countries have something that we don't have? Well, they do. They have large numbers of desperate workers. And that, as capitalism has decided, that it can get away with making all of the workers, except, for the 1%, the golden people, desperate.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you've seen this. We've all grown up with it. We've all not grown up with it, but you can expect to have X number of careers in your life. Or forget about the idea of careers. Everyone's going to be doing contract work.
No, yeah. Geez, that came true. Wow. At least for this poor bastard.
Now,
anyways,
one of the reasons I mentioned the CEO of YouTube, is these people earn enormous salaries. And you want to compare what workers on the shop floor in Japan earn versus their CEOs, and compare that to Canada, the United States. The discrepancy is shocking. But you see, these people are geniuses. They are paid what they're worth. And if if we didn't pay these enormous salaries, they would run off somewhere else. Well, I see no evidence of this because these people are never held accountable for anything. There was this fellow at, Merrill Lynch. I believe he was the first black CEO. And he was, by all accounts, a disaster. And he was given over $150 million to go away. And, of course, my long-term joke about that is, how about if you pay me, 1/10 of his salary and just give me $5 million to go away? Because frankly, I don't think I could have done a worse job than that guy did.
I can go away too.
Again and again.
I'll go away for $1 million.
Oh, that woman with the funny name who was running for president. Remember we mocked her at the beginning of this podcast?
This podcast? Clinton? What? Who? What?
No, there was a woman who ran for the Republican nomination.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah, long horsey face woman. Yeah, right. Oh, God. There you go. I'm drawing a blank here. We'll just edit this out while we come up with her name.
Well, see, the thing is about this woman and why I wanted to mention her is that, she has all this tremendous business experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, she ran a company, and she didn't run it into the ground. Carly Fiorina.
Yeah, she did run into the ground.
It was HP, and she was a disaster there. But what would she get out of this? It was something like $60 or $120 million.
Yeah.
And there was that other woman who was just crushed in the U.S. Senate race by Barbara Boxer. And it was a very similar story that you need to make me your senator because I have all this tremendous business experience at the highest level. And, what America needs now is, they need all this practical experience from the job makers or, the free enterprise. Oh, these people who, these people have never worked a day in their life, And you look at these people, the managerialists, as James Burnham would say, who run these big businesses now. I mean, it doesn't matter if they're in the computer business or, they're in the soft drink business or the alcoholic beverages business or the steel business. They just move back and forth, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Because, one business is pretty much the same, right?
At the top, apparently it is.
At the top, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
At the top.
The plan is what? We're going to acquire as many companies as we can, and
no, actually, I got that wrong. It was Carly Fiorina who got crushed by Barbara Boxer, but there was some other woman who was she was going to be the the future of the Republican Party, and the women were going to show up because the men had been so useless, But this woman was a disaster at her company as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean to pick on women in this regard, but it's like Burnham says in the Machiavellians, it's a self-selected elite.
Yeah.
You get invited into this club, and they might have to evict you from the club, but they're going to give you $50 or $100 million when they do.
Well, then you're still in the club. I think they've created tiers as well, I think that at least in Canada, they've got the tier system going in the public appointments game. They use the universities as a way to sort of get their second tier going, appointing people at various near do nothing jobs. So they seem to have your top 1% and then several tiers on the way down. I guess that's their feeder system. If there is a circulation, it comes, it's kind of rigid, and it comes through the academia, I think, isn't it?
Well, I just,
I don't think it's completely static, is what I'm saying.
Well, my question is, what is it that these people are adding? What is their value? The CEO of a company, if revenues increase by, 6%, is that his doing?
Mm-hmm.
Because, when revenues fall by 6%, it's certainly not his doing.
Right.
They're very keen to let you know.
Not my fault. Not my fault. Yeah. No, there's very little responsibility taken, but that reflects the culture in general. Politicians, of course, they will take responsibility without repercussions. So I don't see why the business leaders can't avail themselves of the prevailing mood as well,
The other woman that I was who ran for governor of California in 2010, and she spent $144 million of her own fortune, was Meg Whitman, who had also been CEO of Hewlett-Packard.
Oh, I see. Is that company still going? Okay, must be. I think they still make printers.
I have an HP computer.
Oh, okay.
No, I didn't. I used to have an HP computer. No, they're very strangely designed. I'll just say that much.
I used to have a laptop that weighed a ton. Holy smokes. I don't know what they made it out of, but it was a real brick. Anyways.
There's this writer, Greg Easterbrook, he's a sports writer. He's written for the New Republic.
Yeah,
and he just, he specializes in these stories about these people who are just, the worst businessmen that you could imagine, and yet they're not allowed to fail. Mm-hmm. Now, I could segue from here into this idea of what capitalism has become. The well-known phrase, privatized profits and socialized risks. That in the Mexican bailout fiasco of 1994, when the capitalists made a bunch of ill-considered loans to Mexico, and they went south, and they went running to the United States government and said, well, we can't lose money on this. Well, why not? Well, because, that would be a mortal blow to capitalism, and we can't have that. And ever since that time, this is the way that capitalism works, that the people who were involved, if you're there at a high enough level, you are guaranteed to become very rich indeed, and your stupid decisions will be paid for by the taxpayer, or actually more to the point, enormous sums of money will have to be borrowed. Yeah, so that you don't lose anything. And look at what happened. I mean, I wrote about this in this introduction to Burnham's Machiavellians, that I'm haunted by what Adam Curtis wrote about this a few years ago, the BBC documentarian, that one would have expected after the near catastrophe of 2007-2008, that you would see fundamental changes in our financial system, but instead it's been more of the same. And the very people who are responsible for this have been given even more power. And Curtis used this phrase associated with Margaret Thatcher, Tina, there is no alternative. Well, why is there no alternative? I would suspect one of the reasons why there's no alternative is because rich people have been buying up everybody. So that there are so few independent people left, such that no one wants to say a word against this malfeasance, because, then they'd, have to look for an $11 an hour job?
Yeah, really. When are they going to get around to buying us off, for heaven's sakes?
Well,
we keep asking.
Steve Saylor mentions that Bill Gates has spent, so much money working with people in education reform that everyone parrots his ideas because he's paying for the whole movement.
Okay. There's the opposite of that, too, where that actually came up with the Google silencing a section of what was that New America Foundation?
Yeah.
That was one of the things that, we see the left now turning on big business in areas like that, where they see them silencing free speech. Claiming, that prior to just recently, they used to never make these judgments before. But I always thought they were just sort of inferred. We hire people who parrot our views. Apparently not. Or at least now the people are, I guess, saying they aren't anyway.
Well, it was handled badly. This, a couple of podcasts ago, I was trying in vain to remember the name of this female warmonger in the United States. And I mentioned Samantha Power, the Irish Banshee, and I mentioned Susan Rice, the mysterious vast fortune.
Not to pick on women.
Yeah. Ann Slaughter, that's her name. And Ann Slaughter was tipped to be, Secretary of State or Secretary of Defense in the Hillary Clinton administration. But, oh, no, we're firing you. No, it has nothing to do with Google's money. It has to do with you're not collegial or transparent. Oh, yeah, that's just, I don't know what that means.
And you're not China, obviously, you would have been brought up on corruption charges.
Yeah, it's, you're not going to explain what you mean by that. It's just, this is sort of the buzzwords that people in that line of country use.
Mm-hmm. Well, in a way, I mean, I can't say that I disagree with Google's decision because, you parrot the company line, right? Why would they think it would be otherwise?
They were a contributor to this foundation. Yeah. It's not that they own this particular wing that the fellow who got fired. It's not that they established that either. Mm-hmm. It's just in the same way that the Sierra Club, some years ago, which had begun to, make some noises about immigration not being good for the environment, they were given a large sum of money by a donor. You can have this large sum of money if you never mention immigration again. Mm-hmm. And that's what's happened.
And then it disappeared, yeah.
I mean, I'll just say that, to my great amusement, since my political views on conservatism started changing in the 90s, I've had people call me Marxist, socialist, such like, which is the opposite of what I am. The opposite of what I am. But
I'll try not to do that too much.
I am not by nature an envious person, and I have really never envied these very rich people their money. That is to say,
except when you run out of cigarettes.
if they have earned the money honestly. But this idea that I have a lot of money, so I'm going to run the world, and I'm going to crush all opposition. It's not acceptable.
Right.
It is not acceptable. These people have no national loyalties. They have no loyalties to communities. They are intent on imposing a monoculture on the world. They want every place to look like Zanzibar. Well, they, retreat up in the hills or build their private islands.
Right. There doesn't seem to be competing interests, I guess. That's the thing. There's competition out there, but they all seem, the goal, like you say, they seem to be able to move from company to company with the greatest of ease, and industry to industry. And maybe that's because, their interests are all the same in a way.
No, they are part of the same elite. They are part of the same hegemonic elite. Now, one of the things that bothers me about rich people is when I look at enterprises like VDare and antiwar.com, that several times a year they engage in all this begging for not very much money. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking, there are plenty of rich people in the United States who this would be a rounding error to give them the money that they need to get through 6 months or a year, even. Mm-hmm. But it would appear that the rich people are now so cowed that, no, we wouldn't want to support an organization like antiwar.com or VDare because, we wouldn't get invited to the right parties anymore and our name would go on a list?
I don't even think it's that. I think it's they understand that the anti-war and VDare are against their interests. They're against the interests of the elite, or at least what we're calling the current elite, the globalists, or as it Chateau Artiste calls them, the global homo. What is it? Global homo.
Just keep saying that. Keep saying global.
Global homo. I can't. Yeah, I'm having
trouble. No. My point is that there are obviously a fair number of rich people in the United States and Canada, for that matter, who are not leftists. They're not SJWs. They're not progressives. And let's say that they are perhaps not all that pleased with the direction of our countries over the last few decades.
Right.
Now, again, I'm just wondering, how much money would I have to have before, I'm 62 now, so that's obviously a consideration. I could expect, I can expect 15 or 20 years left. How much money would I need to have before I stopped caring what anyone thought of my opinions? And I'm thinking, it wouldn't be that much money. It really wouldn't be that much.
Yeah. This is not a fundraiser, folks, but it's starting to sound like one. Okay. I guess the question is what can be done, because I see all this trust busting stuff going on out there, but we're talking about the industry of ideas, when they're talking about censorship and things like that. A lot of people are talking about busting the internet guardians or the internet gatekeepers, and because of their censorship and their lack of support for free speech. I don't know how that would work. That's the problem. I don't know, how would these things be broken up into what?
Well, we start with breaking up monopolies or near monopolies. And I think we start in the entertainment industry, the entertainment/news industry, where you have a handful of companies like Sony and Time Warner, which is about to merge with AT&T, which have far too much power. It leads to monoculture, monothinking, that when you work for one of these vertically integrated companies, the list of things that you can say is very narrow indeed, because you're liable to be impinging on some sort of company that is owned, or, your company has an interest in, or does a great deal of business. Let's look at Canada. The result of concentration in the media has meant, and these are vertically integrated companies, which are utterly dependent on government regulation, by the way. Competition Bureau or the CRTC.
The managerial state.
The managerial state. If you look at what's happened in opinion mongering in Canada, that someone like Laurie Goldstein at the Toronto Sun, who's a good guy, he's about as far right as you can be in this country. And I think he's got to be feeling the pressure.
Mm-hmm. To retire, yes.
Well, there used to be Alberta Report is an example of that. The Western Standard was an example of that. There used to be a robust opposition to left-wing hegemony in Canada. It's gone. It is completely gone now.
Yes, I know.
And you see how someone like Ezra Levant. Oh, well, it looks like this guy's getting too big for his boots. We're going to make a few phone calls, and we are going to bring him down. Now, this is an exaggeration. Not much of an exaggeration.
Yeah.
It's now they're shooting the wounded. Okay, you've denounced Ezra Levant. Why have you only denounced him in the last month? You have all of these people, these politicians and, these journalists in this country who are forced to deal with this question, when did you stop beating your wife?
Mm-hmm.
And of course, when did you stop beating your wife is one of the best weapons to use against anyone, because there's no good answer to that.
Right.
Because of the planted axiom in it. Well, you're a bad person.
Exactly, yeah. So this is the... Oh, you started that sentence, I think, with the vertically integrated companies, blah, da, da. How do you break them up? That was the question, I mean, you say you start with them. I looked at what was the Sherman Act and, subsequent legislation in doing a little research on the busting of the trusts. And these things are fraught with peril because, of course, you have competing interests writing these things as well.
Sure.
So,
okay, well, let's take a company. Let's take a
grudge or
let's take a company like Sony.
Axe to grind.
What does Sony do? Well, they make electronic equipment, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's where they started. And I must say, in that regard, I rather like Sony. I think they make good products. But they also have a movie studio. And they also are one of the few record companies that still exists. And they're partnered with RCA. They have a huge role in what's left of the classical music industry, and they have a huge role in the pop music industry. There used to be hundreds of record companies. Now there's just a handful.
Mm-hmm.
And this has led to very bad things in the recording industry. That there is
Justin Bieber.
There's very little innovation. There's very little quirkiness left. There's very little chance of something coming from left field and becoming popular. Because when you have 3 or 4 record companies, well, they're not going to take any chances. In the same way that you look at the movie studios, and it's all spandex movies now, because they're making spandex movies, so we have to make spandex movies as well. You have this...
Yeah, so they're having a very bad summer.
Yeah, they're having a very bad summer. But the movie studios used to own the theater chains in the United States, and I believe it was circa 1950, the Lowe's case, I think it was. This was stopped. In the same way that you have a problem in England where you had the brewers own the pubs.
Mm-hmm.
there's a principle here that you cannot own the content and own the means by which the content is delivered.
Well, there goes Apple.
What you've seen in the United States, talk radio has largely been wrecked because there were strict restrictions on the number of radio stations that companies could own, particularly in individual cities. This was changed under Clinton, such that you have these companies like Clear Channel, which is called iHeartRadio now.
Yeah.
It just reminds me of this skit.
I think that heart means love.
Yeah. Well, no, it's just we love you, right?
Mm-hmm.
That show
love
that
is love.
Yeah, and love trumps hate, right? Right, Mr. Show.
So.
This Mr. Show. Was it Global Corp or whatever that owned everything, and they came up with this little creature, and it was all about love. And so we talk about love, then, everyone will forget that we're this monstrous corporation that rules everything.
Okay.
These monstrous corporations have to be broken up. And I'll have to say that the European Union has done a better job of this than the American or Canadian governments. Universal, which is the big deal in music now, which bought all these companies, they were going to buy EMI. And the EU said no. So EMI ended up with Warner, which is not the ideal situation, but it's better than the situation of Universal, having a stranglehold on an entire industry, which is what we were looking at.
Strange that we would be saying, look to the EU for solutions. A few years ago, I think it was the opposite. We were looking at the EU as being a busybody organization that overregulated everything.
That remains to be true, but they have the fear there, I guess, of American companies overrunning the continent. When McDonald's shows up in France, going to a cafe for lunch suddenly becomes a luxury. That you see it as a luxury. Because if you're paying 40% more for your meal every day, then I don't think I want to do that. Can I really afford this? Now, you go to McDonald's and you shove a whole bunch of food down your throat, typically in 10 to 15 minutes, and then you don't feel good for the rest of the day. But, you've saved that money, and you've also saved that time. This is this extension of this turbo-capitalist idea, as Edward Luttwak put it. This idea, no, I don't enjoy my lunch anymore, but it costs less, and I've got it finished in 10 minutes. God forbid that anyone should sit down and enjoy a lunch. I'll just say something about a little anecdote about Jim Pattison. I used to work for Jim Pattison, this radio station, CJOR. He owned in Vancouver.
Do you have to explain who he is, Jim Pattison?
He's one of the richest men in Canada.
There you go.
And he owns, what grocery chain does he own? Save-On?
Loblaws? Didn't he have Loblaws?
No, Save-On Foods. Overweighty, Save-On. Yeah, he owns that.
Loblaws is super.
He owns a whole bunch of car dealership. He owns a whole bunch of stuff. He pretty much owns the signage business in Canada. And magazine distribution, or he did. But anyway, he's one of the richest, most powerful men in Canada. And I had a day off from work back in the 80s, and before I worked for him. And I was in a mall, downtown Vancouver Center Mall, I'm thinking. And I saw this man, this short man, moving very, very fast towards me, down the hallway. And I saw that he had something, and he was holding up to his face. And then he got closer, and I said, hey, that's Jim Pattison. And he bought a hot dog from a vendor, and he was shoving it down his face as fast as he could. And I thought, what's the point of being a billionaire if you can't sit down to eat lunch? But no, you must make more money. You must be more efficient.
I suppose, yeah. Trump's a bit like that, though, isn't he? He's one of these guys that, is on the go for 20 hours a day kind of thing. I don't.
Well, I have seen him, eating KFC and McDonald's and Taco Bowl at his desk. Right. At least you're sitting down.
Okay.
The love of money is the root of all evil, as Scripture tells us. But now the love of money is something that apparently we're supposed to put first.
Mm-hmm.
It's the highest goal. And what is particularly obnoxious and wicked is this idea to be rich is glorious, this communist idea, and all of these leftists. I mean, there's someone like Al Gore, who's a tremendously rich man, who flies around, jets around the world talking about global warming. How come this guy isn't a laughing stock? How come he isn't hissed everywhere he appears?
Well, he is becoming something of a laughing stock. I think his Convenient Truth 2 tank, nobody seemed to notice.
Isn't this guy close to EGOTing?
What? What's EGOTing? Is that,
you know what EGOT is?
Is that a new deity? Did I miss something?
EGOT. You don't know about this?
Uh-oh. All right. A sinner that I am.
It stands for Emmy, Grammy, Oscar, Tony.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah. All right.
There's just a handful of people who've ever won all four. But he's got 2 or 3, doesn't he?
I don't know. He hasn't really come up as a topic of conversation everywhere like he did in 2005, was it, or something like that, when the first Inconvenient Truth came out?
No, but you see, you see, Al Gore, he's on the side of the angels. So the fact that he is filthy rich and continues to get richer and lives on an estate, which, as they say, can be seen from space. Oh, well, no, we're not going to lump him in with those bad rich guys. Well, who are the bad rich guys? They're all good now. They don't set standards in the way they used to. Showing up dressed like beach bums. Rich women spending hundreds of dollars for jeans which have been ripped for them. Pre-ripped.
Right.
This disgusting, this idea that, we're just like you. Oh, no. No. You're not just like us. For instance, when normal people go to a restaurant or a bar and they run up a big tab, they tend to pay like 15% tips or whatever. In this rich habit of, no, I mean, you should be grateful to serve us. We're going to give you an embarrassing tip or no tip at all.
Because expect you to comp the meal.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Rich people getting things for free. I mean, I just imagine having the balls, to insist upon this. That no, I want free dresses for me, or I want free dresses for my wife because I'm rich. But you understand that's the business we're in, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can go on and on.
No, but there's something that I've missed that I haven't mentioned that I should have mentioned before. That the rise of this Homo economicus, that there is only one way to measure human happiness or human contentedness, and that is economic statistics.
Mm-hmm.
Well, 1, they're useless at measuring this, and 2, when they become as important as they have, and we've mentioned this before many times, the stats will be juked.
Right, okay.
Because if the only way that we can measure how well we're doing, how well governments are doing, is by various economic indices improving, well, those indices will be worked over to make sure that they look good. Because, there has been this sense since 2008 that things are not good economically and getting worse. But
we managed to borrow ourselves out of it for the time being, right?
I mean, Adam Curtis had mentioned this amazing thing that the capitalists pulled off, which is you're not going to be able to earn the kind of money, have the kind of careers that your fathers and grandfathers did. Ooh, sounds bad. Good news is you can have the things that your fathers and grandfathers had. How? Oh, well, we'll lend you the money.
Yeah. You'll just be paying for them all your lives.
I see.
Yeah.
Now,
I owe my soul to the company store.
Now, I mentioned something else. Rich people have been complicit in the destruction of the public education system. And Jerry Pournelle, the author, social critic, suggests that this is not by accident, because it prevents competition. In a democratic, egalitarian society like the United States or Canada, which is largely the same, this idea of the threat to the hegemony coming from below.
Well, that's also called the circulation of the elites.
The circulation of the elites, exactly. But if the public school system is wrecked, then this isn't going to be much of a problem. If you look at, say, white people going to public school, when in Houston, it's under 10%. In Chicago, it's something like 11 or 12%. Everybody knows that you have to have the money to put your children in private schools, or else their education is going to be useless and your children are going to grow up, with nightmare experiences. This is very good for the rich. And one of the things that it results in is people not having children anymore. Because, let's look at how much housing costs now, which has exploded. This is not, costs of housing have exploded. This is not included in the inflation basket, which is very convenient for our authorities. Oh, so you have to be saving up for your condo, and condos aren't a good place to raise children, or saving up for a house. And of course, you've got to save up for the money for the private schools, with the result that, we're in our 40s now, and now we can finally afford to have children. And then, you know what? How about we don't? Or, these couples find out that they can't. Or that just, it's just decided that sort of that bizarre life that our grandparents used to have, where dad went out to work and mom stayed at home. And, maybe there were 3, 4, 5, 6 children, and they seemed to own houses and maybe own a boat and go away, to the lake for a vacation, a cottage every summer. Wow, what a fantastical life that was.
It was a very short period in human history, though. That's the thing.
It was roughly
19 by tragedy.
Roughly 1945 to 1980, I guess.
Yeah.
But no, it's either this idea that
that's what we're fighting for.
Capitalism was restrained.
Mm-hmm.
Also, immigration, right? Because the good life for the middle class began to end with the Hart-Celler Act in the United States in 1965 and the change in immigration policy in Canada in 1967.
Okay.
It was, going back to the 1990s when you have Alan Greenspan saying specifically, he wasn't hinting at that immigration levels must be kept high so that wages can be kept low. Now, this is rather shocking to me that someone in his position would actually come out and say this in public. But this idea that capitalism works now to make people's lives worse. But it has become like Marxism. It has become an allegedly scientific system, which is in effect a pseudo-religion.
And any criticism of it, you are a racist. A racist.
Oh, more than, a racist. I mean, this argument was made by Virginia Postrel at Reason Magazine, and there was this fellow, he was blown up by the Unabomber. He lost an arm or something.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. This idea, that Americanism is a religion, that capitalism is a religion, that criticism of capitalism is, equivalent to anti-Semitism, amongst other things, which is really quite remarkable. I mean, Sir James Goldsmith, who was a rapacious capitalist, who repented near the end of his life, I believe he had citizenship of, England, France, Israel, Mexico, United States. That's 5 countries. There may have been another. But he said that the economy exists to serve us. We do not exist to serve the economy, which is now considered a controversial view. Because capitalism, or the free market, as they call it, is this supposedly ineluctable historical and scientific force, which it is not.
Right. Okay.
I mean, my message would be, not that, consider much of a threat coming from me, but the people who run the world now, the rich people, seem to have this idea that it is written in the stars or, written in scripture, or written in our DNA that they must have this much money and this much power. This could be taken from them very quickly. And it has been taken from them in places around the world in the past.
I think it's even had in the United States. We were talking about the 90% tax rate midweek. I think, the fact that that only disappeared, with Kennedy, you said?
The great supply-side hero, John F. Kennedy, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'll just say with 90% tax rates, at a similar rate, or even higher in Britain.
They did it in France too.
These people don't pay the tax. There are various loopholes that are found. Mm-hmm. Lawyers and accountants are enriched. I'm not going to advocate for a 90% tax, but the existence of rich people, particularly very rich people, this can be controlled. The argument of the capitalists has been, oh, no, you can't make any changes. Well, the deregulation of business, which led to this explosion of billionaires and financial services, this is the result of changes. It also nearly destroyed the world. What was changed one way can be changed back. Going back to this question of what is it that this proliferation of billionaires, what does it do for us?
I don't know. And one thing I've been just sitting here waiting to jump in with was, when did this change? Here we are, a couple of alt-right or dissident right guys, and we're advocating eat the rich. When did the script flip? You say you started thinking about this stuff in the 90s, but it seems to me since Obama, the left has been in love with big business. How did that happen? They're the ones, Antifa, they're the ones that are being supported by, well, not Antifa, but the left, they're being supported by Apple and they're being supported by Google. How did this happen? How did the script flip?
Well, the left realized that big business could be used to advance its agenda.
Mm-hmm.
And as I say, that this trade-off of you leave us alone, you deregulate us, and on the other hand, we will support you. And with our money. If you look at any of these conferences, that are going to make the world a bad place, right? If you look at these NGOs, and there's some government money there, but who's supporting them? Well, Microsoft is supporting them, and KPMG is supporting them, and there's all these famous companies that are supporting them. And this is a kind of tax that big business pays in order to have the power that it does. Now, this is not so much a general tax as a specific tax. That when these NGOs get money from big business, and this tax, as I say, isn't going into the general revenue pool.
Right, yeah. Yeah, it's going to support their ideas.
Amazon famously did not pay any taxes in Great Britain. Did not pay any taxes. Microsoft is another company that did not pay taxes because of this fiction that its operations were in Ireland or in Puerto Rico.
Right. Well, yeah, taxes can be avoided. Ship the money overseas.
I remember I mentioned Jim Pattison.
That's what the SPLC did.
I mentioned Jim Pattison, and it was something like 10 or 15 years ago, this interview with Jim Pattison, where he was talking about the potential for economic changes in Canada affecting people like him. And he said that he would have to consider if there were certain changes that he would leave Canada. And I thought, I just lost all sympathy for you. I had a stroke. Because Canada's been very good to you, Mr. Pattison. And your attitude towards Canada is, I don't owe you anything.
Well, he probably feels that, he's a job creator. Look at all the jobs I've created.
Are they job creators now?
Well, I don't think they have been for a while. Not at least, decent middle class jobs. That's the thing.
Any
Alberta,
kind
for
of
instance,
jobs.
Where I live, the only people that were providing decent jobs were the government and the oil industry. It seemed, and people who supplied the oil industry.
No, you look at the United States at the number of people who are out of the workforce continues to reach historic numbers closing in on 100 million people.
Right, a third of the population.
Now, in the United States, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, if you work 1 hour a week, you are said to be employed, which is clearly farcical. But we have these people talking now about how robots are going to take over everything. And so how is that going to work exactly? Are these people just going to sit home and get their EBT and all drink Soylent?
Right, yeah.
You know, we're going to put you're going to put all you dumbos and the people who don't have the connections. You're not going to work. But, don't worry. Marcus Facebook has talked about a guaranteed annual income, right? Mm-hmm. So now we'll have these slaves of the government.
Right, yeah.
There's something else I wanted to mention in this regard. It has to do with slavery. It's a long-standing principle in the United States that you can't work for free. Now, there's case law regarding this. You want to get a working show business or the media or the NGO sector? I was looking, I won't mention this man's name. You know him, I know him. He's from Alberta. And I was looking at his daughter. People put these things up on LinkedIn about themselves, and I'm thinking, why have you pretty much laid out your whole life for us here?
So weirdos like you can look at
Don't you understand the value of privacy? In any event, this fellow that we both know was supporting his daughter for about 10 years as she got a BA degree, and then she started an MBA, which she abandoned, and then started a second MBA at a different institution. She completed that. And there was a series of internships, unpaid internships. And so I figured that this young woman, that her father probably paid something like between $250,000 and $500,000. And she's now ended up in a well-paid, somewhat influential position. But you see the problem where, I'm just as smart as she was, or I'm prepared to work just as hard as her. Do you have a rich father? No. Well, how do you think you're going to get one of these intern jobs? Who's going to pay for you? Have you saved up enough money so that you can survive for 6 months while you're working this internship? Well, no. How would I have the opportunity to save this money? Well, you see, the system has decided that you're a loser from the start.
Okay, there you go. We're all losers. Thanks, Kevin. Can we end this thing on a positive note?
Yeah, it's
please, God.
Sure.
Make it. Go ahead.
As Jim Morrison said, they've got the guns, but we've got the numbers. Economic nationalism is the key. That's for these line, yeah. For these neoliberals and the neocons and these horrible people like Paul Ryan to no. He's supposedly a Catholic, although he's besotted with Ayn Rand, who was a ferocious atheist. That what this is the way that God wants it, that your life is crummy. And, you know that it's crummy because look at how your father lived and look at how your grandfather lived. And it's only going to get crummier. But that's capitalism, and yay, capitalism. Well, it seems that in the new form of capitalism, this turbo capitalism that Luttwak talked about, you have not very many winners and a vast amount of losers. This is something that both the right and the left can get behind. The left was traditionally interested in, working people, as they called them, the working class. Now they're interested in, 57 gender varieties. But, as I say, there's more of us than there are of them. And their arguments are so self-serving, so tautological, so redolent of, naked greed, that they cannot...
Just call them flimsy.
They can't win in the political marketplace. That is to say, if we get more people like Trump, pushing Bannon's idea.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, he's got to move it along with this ferocious opposition, trying to label it as hateful. That's their values ideas is what they're trying to push now. It seems to be working, I guess, better in Canada than in the United States. I've noticed that it's really on the wane there. The turnaround after Charlottesville, I was quite surprised at at that, how everybody's turning on Antifa. And even in Salon now, there was an article about this guy saying, it's time to give up on identity politics. And as one guy on NPC remarked, I like this, he said, oh, they think this train has brakes, do they? In other words, now that identity politics have been introduced and people on the right and the white people are playing them, they want to change the rules. And, that ain't going to happen. So, economic nationalism, I think, has a chance. I mean,
look, it's time for it's time to dump conservatism. Just don't even use the word anymore. This obsession with tax rates, particularly with marginal tax rates and capital gains taxes, all this ridiculous talk of the holy entrepreneur. Look, entrepreneurship is not something that very few people are suited for a start. I mean, that should be fairly obvious. But no, the idea we're all going to create our own jobs, give it a rest.
Mm-hmm.
Look at the period. Look at the period between 1945 and 1975, say, and let's look specifically at how we can move back to that. That would be my specific advice. Find the ways in which laws, regulations, policies, like immigration, have been changed, and then work back to the policies, regulations, laws that we had before, such that this golden age for ordinary people can be replicated.
Right. Reverse engineer the legislation. Okay. Now that's an interesting idea and a very positive note. Very positive note with which to end our podcast. So, we're going to close up episode 91 of Grace and Steel. I'm Kevin Steele.
And I'm Kevin Michael Grace.